Right, let's start the fun. That is assault rifle. Best in slot. I'm gonna die. Right, yet again I have to say, because I'm still getting it. Why did no one get it? If it's not best in slot, I'm not going to talk about it. I get people asking, why am I not talking about this or talking about that? Because it's not best in slot. And being the fact that we're now on assault rifles, which I've left till last for a very specific reason, because there's a lot to go over with these weapons, you are going to see things that you don't agree with, or potentially things that you view as boring. I've had so many people already, meta just means playing in cover simulator. It's a cover-to-cover looter shooter, so yeah, I would hope so. I would also like to point out that pretty much all of these builds that I have posted so far, none of them are actually mine. I've not magically come up with these. These are on forums, Reddit posts. I've checked with some of the best builders in the game on a lot of information. I've learned a lot more math to come up with or math these out. I've double checked a lot of findings with Hutchler, Rousey. I've used pretty much every IKEA spreadsheet that I can find. If you don't know who IKEA is, pretty much all the base math that I have done or ever worked on is all from IKEA. These are not my builds. These are essentially just mathematically proven top tier end game builds, and the idea behind best in slot or the meta isn't to be able to do maximum damage for like 10 seconds. If that was the case, you would see a lot more Umbra initiative. It's being able to do as high a consistent damage for as long as possible. That's the difference between Division and other games. With other games, Monster Hunter for example, a lot of the builds will be run around in a circle, build up certain buffs, and do one big hit, run around in a circle again. With Division, it's not so much trying to just run around in a circle, hit them for 10 million, run around in a circle, hit them for 10 million. It's doing your utmost to get 1 million damage every bullet continually, as a poor example. A more accurate example, as well as sort of on terms with Division, would be Strikers versus Umbra. Initially, Umbra is about 150% more powerful than Strikers is initially. The issue is the longer you use Umbra without resetting the buff, without you personally as a player manually resetting the buff, your DPS drops until it hits very, very minimal areas and stages. Whereas Strikers, the longer you use it, which doesn't require manual resetting, you just have to use it, the higher your DPS goes. Which is why Umbra, technically, although it is very powerful and in certain situations it can be almost considered best in slot, but due to the mechanic of it, at no point is Umbra Initiative best in slot. There are going to be very, very good builds that you can make with Umbra Initiative, and I run Umbra Initiative and I've got nothing against it. But Umbra Initiative, because of its mechanic, is not going to be best in slot for pretty much 99% of situations and scenarios. Strikers, on the other hand, can be. There's the difference. I'm hoping we've cleared that up. And the main reason I've gone over this a little bit in this video is because ARs are very versatile. And despite the fact that this is going to be a best in slot video and I'm going to be talking about best in slot ARs, there are going to be some things that you don't agree with, or in certain circumstances with your AR build you may very well be able to do more. But it's how consistently can you do that. Anyway, let's get started. Up first, we have the Perfect Glass Cannon build. It's higher on the headshot damage, 60% crit chance, averages about 211% critical hit damage, and we have DTA or DTH times DTOC. 3-piece Providence defense, utilising the gift as well as the sacrifice, contractors, foxes, Cody's mask, and then finishing off our trio of Providence defense, we have a holster. Best in slot AR is going to be FAMAS, and the best in slot talent at this point is going to be Strained or Flatline. I've gone with Strained for the DPS talents, and I am showing the DPS chart eventually when we get to it as Strained. I will be using Strained throughout. Going for Flatline just can confuse the issue. Next build is what I like to dub FGC, which is Fenris, Seska, Grupo, Contractors, Foxes, Coyote's Mask. The difference here with this is the main damage difference is dropping from perfect glass cannon to normal vanilla glass cannon. This loses a bit of damage on the headshot, however you do slightly more on body shots. In terms of DPS though, it's basically identical, 60% crit chance, 211% critical hit damage on average. We still got DTA, DTH times DTOC. Like I said, the main difference here is we're losing 5% amp from perfect glass cannon to glass cannon, and we're substituting that for 10% AR damage. Now in terms of DPS, these are both basically identical. Perfect glass cannon being the top build, FGC, Fenris Grupo Seska being the bottom. As I'm hoping you can see, against body shots, Fenris Grupo Seska will do 0.33% more. That's the difference on body shot. However, on headshot, perfect glass cannon does nearly 5% more. So it really then does sort of depend on your level of accuracy. Now, I'm aware a lot of people like using glass cannon. So the flip side to this is, if you do plan on going obliterate, despite the fact that we lose just about 5% overall, on obliterate, the Fenris Grupo Seska will do more than 3P's Providence. So essentially what I'm kind of saying is, if you're going to go glass cannon, 3P's Providence. If you're going to go obliterate, Fenris Grupo Seska. But glass cannon is going to be more regardless of how you feel. Up next we have pristine example builds. The first one with 3P's Providence still is more headshot orientated. We have 120% headshot, 150% critical hit damage, and we're still rocking our 60% crit chance. 3P's Providence, pristine example, Contractors, Foxes. Although this build does amazing on headshot, we don't get that much of an increase on body shot. So if your accuracy isn't up to scratch, I would suggest this one, which is basically the exact same, but rather than 3P's Providence, we've gone back to using Fenris Grupo Seska. This is slightly less on headshot, going from 120 to 105, but our crit stats are still the exact same. I do personally feel that overall this build does work better just because of the averages. So let's just have a look at the DPS, shall we? So top build is Focus with 3P's Providence. The bottom one is Focus with Fenris Grupo Seska. Hopefully here we can see that in terms of damage on body shot, both are pretty lackluster. In fact, the 3P's Providence is lower than our perfect glass cannon build. However, on headshot, both are significantly more. So these really are more headshot orientated builds, which is kind of sad. I mean, they are very, very powerful builds. The issue is we just lack so much oomph behind it as well. Along with the fact that we are missing a hell of a lot of critical hit damage, you potentially can start replacing things with things like Coyotes, but you end up then having to play a range game, and being the fact that you're using perfect focus, you want to be at a little bit greater range than what you normally would be without a scope. At which point, using high-end focus, I personally feel, isn't actually all that, unless you are some sort of god-tier headshot monster. Now, there are some people, Hutchler included, that prefer the focus playstyle to the third-person playstyle. So it really also does just come down to the person. They're both pretty much quite even. However, like I said at the start of the video, ARs are incredibly versatile. Just to show of what you're able to do with an AR, I'm going to give, well, it's not best in slot, so I shouldn't be doing this, but just to give you an idea, I'm going to show the build that I'm running in the background that allows me, taking a slight DPS drop, to gain so much utility on the build itself, which I've tried really hard not to show because it's going to be an AR video, but just to show, I am using 3P's Providence, including the gift and the sacrifice, Grupo gloves instead of Contractors, and rather than Coyote's Mask, I am using Dod City holster in conjunction with Regulus. Now, in terms of performance, technically speaking, this build is nowhere even close to best in slot. In DPS, I've lost 9.5 on head, and I've lost over 15% on body. However, what I've lost in initial DPS, I have gained in overall utility and survivability, just by adding Dod City Holster. Just simply because I can just go, that one guy in particular, goodbye. Or if I'm quick enough and savvy enough and know the spawn locations, which sadly I do, I can just go, that entire spawn in particular, goodbye. And if I'm struggling for armor, due to the fact that I'm using gunner, I get 10% armor on kill. If I can one shot an entire spawn, I can basically go from 0 armor to full armor in one bullet. This is what I mean by utility and versatility within these builds. This also demonstrates rather perfectly why I'm doing these videos, just in case you needed to catch up. Just because things are best in slot doesn't mean you have to run them. You can find another way around it and just incorporate a few best in slot pieces, or use the best in slot build as a skeleton and then adapt it to how you wish to play. This is de facto still my favourite build. Shield Splinterer, Dod City Holster, 3-piece Prov, Grupo, Foxes. I run an M1A Classic if I want to do a little bit more range, and just in case there's a Chunga or just an entire spawn that needs to disappear immediately, I've got a Dod City Holster with a Regulus. Solves all problems. Have fun, good luck. Don't die. It's bad for the health.